Hello everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here today. This is your one-stop shop for cryptocurrency analysis, among many other things. We're taking a look here today at Ergo. Could be Ergo, I'm not sure. You'll probably hear me say Ergo because that is a cool fancy word that I like to use on occasion. So maybe we'll get that out of my system here. That being said, this is for educational purposes only. Always recommend you do your own research. I'm not a financial advisor, but I have 15 years of trading experience. My goal is to help you become a better, more effective trader. Now I'm covering this because of my request from, I believe he's referred to as Abid. Am I saying that correctly? I sure hope I am. He made the request for Ergo, and I want to make sure to honor that. He is one of my patrons, and I have a community members that make requests consistently. That's why I actually have this channel, to ensure that I help you become more of an effective, self-sufficient trader, somebody that can kind of do their own thing when you can, right? I don't want you to be reliant on me or anyone else for that matter. It's important to kind of develop your own style, so learn as much as you can from as many people as possible. If you're more of an autopilot person, or perhaps you want more day in the life of a trader, feel free to reference my Telegram community, which is through my Patron account. You can actually follow all of my trades. I share every single trade with my community members and provide you with best practice, profit targets, sell targets, entry targets, and I also do day trades, swing trades, and hodl trades. So a lot of cool dynamic experiences that you can kind of sponge from and learn from. So definitely check that out in your own time. But we almost have 50 members at this point in the community, and it's growing rapidly, a lot quicker than I expected in only 2.5, I think maybe 3 months. So awesome experience. Cannot thank you enough to all my patrons. You make my life so much better because I get to actually do this consistently with you, and it makes it so much better to be able to share the experience with someone else. That being said, we'll check it out the video here next. Without further ado, let's get right to it. All right, folks, let's go ahead and take a look at Ergo. And just before we do, we always look at Bitcoin and Ethereum first before we, look at the altcoins in question, because the simple fact that we need to know what the industry is telling us. And obviously, a lot of coins on the ERC20 blockchain, so I think it's advantageous to consider that. If nothing else, always look at Bitcoin before you jump in to the analysis, right? That's the key here. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that here in just a moment. Before we do, I'd like to preface, I use TradingView.com desktop application. I have a link in the description below for a free month. See if you like it. There is a paid version of this, of course. It just gives you 2 indicators present at any given time, and it's very tedious to keep adding and removing indicators when you're jumping through different time frames. So just keep that in mind. Check that out in your own time if you want. If not, that's okay too. Now, with Bitcoin right now. So first of all, we're going to look at the 4-hour chart. Couple things to note here. We had this crazy up and down thing earlier today that was connected to Litecoin with Walmart and all that stuff. That was fake news, has nothing to do with anything. So that's why we saw a spike and a decrease in a matter of minutes, right? It happened pretty quick. So that being said, that's kind of in the past, but what the bottom line here is the fact that Bitcoin is working itself into still a consistent channel. If we look at the 1-day chart, you can kind of see here that 44,800 is a support level and 46,000 is a major resistance. So it's kind of done that for the last 3.5 days so far. So we'll see if it can kind of break through that. But for right now, 46 is a resistance, 44.8 is a support. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Also note too, this is partially coincidence, but we have a bit of a death cross here where the price got significantly decreased right there on the 4-hour chart. Sometimes there is a correlation there, sometimes not. And bear in mind too, we also see a potential golden cross on the 1-day chart here. These are usually more impactful for Bitcoin. So there's a potential for the price to increase within the next 24, 48 hours based on that sentiment alone. It really just depends on who you are. I get this question a lot, do you use EMA or SMA for the golden cross or the death cross? Ultimately, it's up to you, because industry leaders, they're going to use both and or one or the other. Some favor EMA, some favor SMA. I'm more of an SMA fan myself in the larger time frames because it makes more sense. It's not as exaggerated of a price action. That makes more sense in a smaller time frame. Again, just in my 15 years of trading, I've noticed that SMA works better for me personally. Regardless, that factors in here just a little bit, but just keep in mind that's kind of what's going on here. Also note major resistance at 50,000 and also a support level here at 42,200. That would be our secondary support channel if 44,000 breaks. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now moving on to Ethereum. I haven't looked at Ethereum in a little while, but we can see at this point we've got a potential death cross coming through here where the 50's coming down towards the 200 could push the price action down a little bit. Again, I like to take that with a grain of salt. I like to look at everything as well as that one thing and not base my trade only on that sentiment alone. Okay, But regardless, if you look at the price here, you can see it's kind of stuck at about 3,200. That's the major support level for Ethereum. And of course, resistance that hasn't been tested in a little while at about 3,500. So 3,550 is a close approximate there for resistance. All right, moving on to Ergo. Let's go ahead and take a look at the one-day chart. There's not a lot of data here, and in fact, I looked at this too. Really, it's only one, it's only on KuCoin right now. So this was the ICO date of August 5th. So August 5th essentially was the ICO date. Great ICO date, by the way. That was no less than 2 weeks after Bitcoin jumped up past 30,000. So a lot of coins that have ICO dates after Bitcoin started to increase above 30,000 have price action like this, which is neither good nor bad. It just pretty much means that the price is, they're typically going up. They're usually increasing. The key takeaway here is the fact that we don't truly know what the average true range of Ergo is at this point yet. There's not enough data. All we can really do is look at the shorter time frames, kind of understand what's going on. Big picture here, we've got some pretty obvious resistance level at about 1883. We can go ahead and mark that on the chart for future reference, of course. And the main reason why too, and I get this question a lot as well, where do you draw your support lines? Well, you can use it on 4-hour, 15-minute, 1-hour charts. All of them work. But the one-day chart is the most effective, the strongest support and resistance levels. Because even though we can probably go at a shorter time frame and see that 1950, 1946 roughly was a strong resistance, this works a little bit better because the one-day chart is traditionally the more sought-after support and resistance levels. Okay. Furthermore, why don't we just go ahead and mark a support here as well? And we can see that too. 14.15 is a nice support. All right, so it's got a little channel here. Let's go ahead and see if we, oh yeah, SMA isn't working because we don't have enough data, but we do have the MACD. So the MACD here, I know it's a little abbreviated, but you can see that it's still on the decline, of course, because there was a reset. Bears are still in control, but the likelihood of this kind of swinging back up, oops, that was the wrong guy here, swinging back up is fairly consistent with, I would say, the next week. So there's a good chance we're going to see in the next few days the convergence perhaps occur in an upward fashion where we get a bullish convergence to the upside. But right now it's kind of a little premature to note. We don't necessarily know. But what is nice is the price is above 50 and below 70 on the RSI. That's usually a really good sign because a 50 on the RSI works as a support level in a lot of cases. So the fact that it came down and bounced off the 50 here and is staying in that channel, so to speak, kind of hovering on 55.60, that's a great sign for the price. Just means that it's going to probably still consistently stay above somewhere in the range of about 1665. Now also note here as well, Bitcoin sold off on September 7th, and this did as well. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It was just doing its consolidation here, got kind of raked down, and now it's coming back up. That happens. A lot of coins did that. So you just got to keep that in mind as well, that, this isn't perfect, right? It's not like a coin that's just moving on its own. There's a lot of coins right now kind of doing its own thing regardless of what Bitcoin does. So you got to keep in mind that, coins like these, even though it's a recent ICO date and it's responded pretty well to Bitcoin, it's kind of done more increasing than decreasing, it is still susceptible to sell-offs. Okay, so keep that in mind, but keep this also in mind is that moving forward, if Bitcoin keeps going sideways, this will probably keep pushing to test this resistance level and break, and likely start making higher highs. There's a good chance of that just based on the fact that it kind of is still trending up here, and you can see it was doing a nice period of consolidation right here before it sold off. So literally, hadn't that happened, we'd probably see it right here, possibly even break above. So again, there's some really good stuff you can kind of just disseminate here on the one-day chart for Ergo. Moving on to the 4-hour. 50-day simple moving average is working as a support level now. The price came down and tested that and bounced, which is fantastic. And the 200 is essentially pushing the price action up. So I prefer the 4-hour chart for the SMA 50 and the 200. I think they work very well together. Or just on that time frame more specifically, kind of helps us understand more, I would say, stronger support and resistance levels. Okay. So that's good news. Again, RSI is up over 50, which is also fantastic. We may have a convergence on the MACD here soon on the 4-hour chart. That is, again, my preferred MACD to utilize or to kind of use as a baseline on when to take entry. So there's a good chance that the price can continue sideways or increase. That will converge, and we'll see a break to the upside. It could very well spike up here. So I like the way that Ergo is maturing and kind of transitioning here. It looks like it's going inside. This feels like the calm before the storm. So if you have a position right now, I wouldn't recommend selling. I just recommend moving up your stop loss somewhere in the range of $14. That way, if it does come down and break below, or if you see here it's stopped right here a few times, what you do is you take the lowest wick on the below the support, it's about $13, and put your stop loss just below that. So I'd say like $12.90 or something would be a good stop loss for this. Because if it does come down and it tests the support level, it should reject and continue back upwards. But what I'm getting at is I don't think that's even necessary, even though you should always do that. Don't get me wrong. The sentiment isn't necessary in the sense that it will probably continue to test this resistance level and eventually break. Okay. So just keep that in mind, and bear this in mind too. Hadn't this occurred, because let's just act like that didn't happen, there's a good chance that we're going to see a breakout soon. If you kind of got rid of that, or just say that hadn't happened, and rewind here, we probably would have seen something like this, where the price probably broke out to the upside. Something to that effect. Anyways, it's all speculation, of course. We don't truly know, but this does have like kind of an ascending pattern forming where it keeps testing the resistance. And the more often you test the resistance, the more likely it is to break. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I think there's a strong chance this could continue upwards. So I guess just say be ready for that. Let's move on to Ishimoku. We're probably close to the top. Let me go ahead and disable this guy here. So we're trying to break out. So it's trying to break out above the cloud. So technically right now is a no buy zone if you are in a position to say, or planning to take a position rather. If you're in a position, obviously hold, because I think there's a good chance we're going to test and break through the resistance in the near future. But the bottom line here is that we're within the cloud. Therefore, it's considered a no buy zone. But if it breaks above and can stay above for just say 2 to 4 hours, then we're going to have a pretty good strong likelihood of a potential breakout. And what I mean by that is the fact that if you look back here, every time it's broken above the cloud, it's tried to test the resistance level. You can see that here it kind of almost did. Here it definitely did. It did there as well. And it even did here, but that was a late breakout of the cloud. So, the bottom line here is that anytime the price breaks above the cloud, it has been testing that resistance level. So I think there's a strong likelihood if you pay attention to the 1 hour chart on Ergo, you'll see this when the price breaks above and just say it holds for a little while. It'd be a good consideration to take a long position, or maybe consider adding to your position, because I'm speculating there's going to be a lot of short sellers that are kind of having a price up here, and if the price breaks above, it'll send the price even further when the shorts get squeezed out. Again, I think the likelihood of shorts in this coin is pretty low, considering because there's usually a lot more short action on larger coins, more established coins, but you see them everywhere. You never truly know until there's a squeeze, and it's really a beautiful thing if you're on the long side of it. But let's go back to let's take a look here at TD Sequential. Okay, yeah, not much to really note here, but something I just want to quickly educate you on. TD Sequential is really an awesome indicator that helps you understand market exhaustion. So when you see a 9, it basically just means there's a reset, and it's going to turn around and go the opposite direction. So we can see here, 1 counted all the way down to a 9, and then it reset, went sideways, and now it's starting to increase. Therefore, with this right here, where we see a 7 and then a 1, it basically is going to be a reset, so we could see some sideways action for a little while, and then it could possibly break up or down. We don't know which direction it's going to break, but I do think that in general, we have a little bit of a momentous trend here. It could likely still continue sideways. We really just have to hope that Bitcoin kind of stays stable for a little while, because you can see this little sell-off right here. That is when Bitcoin sold off again earlier today, right? Well, the cool thing is it's not exaggerated, right? This is not a super huge sell-off. I mean, granted, that's a decent amount. It was like $3. So the percent-wise is probably fairly large. But compared to what it could have done, from a few days ago where we had that crazy sell-off on the 5th of September, or was that I think that was the 7th rather, but generally speaking, I mean, we're looking to be in pretty good shape. It's not like, it's not completely selling off. It's holding pretty strong in this upper echelon of this support and resistance zone, and I think that's important. All right, so moving on to the 15. We're not going to really be able to figure out much here, honestly, because this really helps. I mean, when you look at the EMA and VWAP, so if you're new to the channel, just to rewind, I utilize the VWAP, which is the volume weighted average price. It's an acronym. It's that blue line there. And it basically just tells us when the price is considered to be, above or below support. So it's kind of a consistent support and resistance level. Price is below support, but it just broke down. There's a chance, even though it looks like it's on the downswing, it is making higher highs and higher lows. Okay, so that's important to recognize. As long as this candlestick closes above this one here, we should be able to see more consistency to the upside. Regardless, price is under VWAP right now, and it did just reset, of course. It resets every 24 hours at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's now 6:41 p.m. here in Pacific Standard Time Zone. Therefore, the reset is recent. So we don't really have this established support and resistance level. It's more beneficial, I'd say, halfway through the trading day. Okay. Bottom line too also is the price is just in general, it's making higher highs and higher lows. So that's the important thing to take away from here. Not much else we can really understand for EMA and VWAP. So to summarize, let's take a look at the one-day chart again. We've got a support and resistance level. We've got support at about 14.15. Okay. So again, if you're going to consider adjusting your stop loss, move it just below the lowest wick here, which is about 13.11. So maybe just go with an even 13 as a support, or to move your stop loss up to $13 even. Therefore, if the price were to come down, bounce off the support, you don't get stopped out. But if it goes way below, you're still in good shape. You take some profit, right? If you just add a position up here, perhaps consider moving your stop loss up a little bit higher, if you want kind of a tighter stop loss. But for me, when it comes to altcoins like this, I mean, you can see, like, for example, I get this question a lot with my patrons. Like, well, where should I set my stop loss? Usually, the common rule of thumb is like just say 10% lower than your current entry point. However, with Bitcoin, oftentimes Bitcoin will move 5 to 10% in a day, right? And when it does that, altcoins commonly move about 1.5 to 2 times the amount as Bitcoin does, right? So if Bitcoin goes 1%, you could see a 2% adjustment on the altcoin. Therefore, 10% on altcoins isn't necessarily the best common rule of thumb. You oftentimes want to put it just below the lowest wick on the corresponding support level. Okay. So again, I would put it all the way down there. It seems crazy to take entry up here and have a support level down there. Yes, you could get stopped out, but the likelihood of that happening is fairly low considering the consistency here so far. Again, all we can really do is rely on what we have at this point. We've got barely 1 month's worth of trading data here, so there's no like previous all-time highs or things of that nature we can really rely on. Yes, there's an all-time high that was established a week ago. That's still very recent, right? So anyways, I'm just getting at the fact that you want to be cautious in this scenario, but you got to also kind of be liberal in a sense to allow it to kind of move naturally. I prefer not to take entry in coins like this just because I like to have more of a history when I make my investments, because history has a tendency of repeating itself, and this hasn't really established itself yet. So we're still kind of in uncharted territory. That being said, as far as uncharted territory is concerned, I think there's a strong likelihood of this break into the upside just based on its momentum, how it responded to this sell-off from Bitcoin. It's staying in the same zone that it had before. So its last 2-week range is somewhere in the range of $16.75 upwards of about $19. Right now, it's on the lower end. So therefore, I think there's a good chance if Bitcoin doesn't sell off, and Bitcoin can go sideways, perhaps even just slowly start etching up to about 50,000. We're going to start seeing higher highs, higher lows. It's going to break that resistance level and continue upwards. How high? It's hard to say. I honestly don't know. I don't know the fundamentals here. I always recommend you always do your own research, of course. I think I mentioned that before I started this video, but the bottom line is that, with coins like this, new ICOs, always look deep into it to make sure it's going to have strong fundamentals before you invest in it. Because obviously somebody sees value in it with this kind of price action. And we can see there's a decent amount of volume too, all things considered, especially starting its ICO at somewhere in the range of $5, right? So between 5 and 6 it opened up, and it's definitely almost 3 times that amount at this point. It's really cool. So how much higher it could go, hard to say, but I think that there's a strong likelihood that it's going to continue, I think, upwards just based on how well it's responded to Bitcoin recently. But just bear in mind, again, Bitcoin sells off to 40,000 or lower, we're going to see it start breaking these support levels and coming down. That could happen. That's why you always set a stop loss, okay? So you can have a nice tight stop loss if you want, but I think somewhere in the range of 13, depending on your position, would be a good one, just to allow it to kind of have that room to breathe and pay attention to it. If Bitcoin breaks 46,000, I think this is going to have a run and push all the way up to break its previous all-time high. I think that's really a strong likelihood. So if you found benefit, please like and subscribe. If you haven't, that's okay too. Obviously, comment down below if you have any suggestions or thoughts on this coin, of course. But check out my Patreon account as well if you're not already a member. This was for a community member, of course. So thank you very much for recommending that I cover this here. But I share all my trades with my community members, and I provide you with best practice. The community is growing rapidly. we're trending towards 50 members in just under 2 months. So it's been a really good experience so far, and there's a lot of good stuff going on there. So thank you again to my patrons, and you're welcome for videos like these, because this is why I do this, right? Just for you, to make sure we help you out. All right, thanks again for your time. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in the next video. Take care.